everybody. I would like to call to order the regular meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission for Wednesday, July 27th. May I have the roll call, please?
Chair McGill,
Here.
Vice Chair Clark, Commissioner Aldana,
Present.
Commissioner Feck,
Present.
Commissioner Lesnar Buxton, Commissioner Longstreet,
Here.
Commissioner Anander LaBerge.
Thank you. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
No, we do not.
Thank you. And with written public comment, we did receive some written public comment, I believe it was last week. And then you sent something earlier today on one of those tree items. Is there anything else? No, okay. That takes us to public comment. Any member of the public may address the commission for up to 2 minutes on any subject within the jurisdiction of the commission that is not scheduled for a public discussion before the commission. Total amount of time for public comment will be 15 minutes. I do not have any speaker slips for non-agenda items. Is there anybody?
Yes, I have one hand raised.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Okay, Ms. Valente, this is Victoria Valente. I'm going to allow you to talk. You will have 2 minutes to
Yeah,
speak.
okay.
You may unmute yourself.
Okay.
Great, go ahead.
Okay. As many of you may know, the city of Oxnard is in the process of building their second aquatic center, this time a $40 million complex, if my memory serves. They already have an Olympic-sized pool of 50 meters by 25 yards, but they thought that low-income residents of Oxnard needed access to aquatics. This new project is the result. Yes, they are a larger community than ours, but national standards go by percent of a population. And the city of Santa Barbara should be providing its residents at a minimum 4 times what we have now. Why would Santa Barbara waste this opportunity by building a substandard pool? I hope you will take a look at the City of Oxnard's community outreach website for a lesson in how things should be done. It's easy to find, easy to Google, and it's bilingual. The short educational video embedded in their site actually educates the public. You can find it by Googling South Oxnard Aquatic Center. They educate their residents about the elements of a proper aquatic center. Can you believe it? Upon finding this site, I became very angry thinking about how our city handles community outreach. In contrast, the city of Santa Barbara provided brainstorm boards pre-printed with the words non-competition pool, and they misinformed rather than educated the community on what would provide benefit in an aquatic center. For example, the master plan pool design description, the pool provides 4 lanes that are 25 yards long. The depth and the proposed pool operations were designed to provide year-round access and ensure that the pool is not monopolized by competitive aquatics programs that potentially reduce community access to the pool. Misinformation. Nobody wants their neighborhood pool monopolized by competitive aquatics programs, right? Grab a pitchfork or a placard. What about access to aquatics? The real issue is we need more pools and we need access. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, and are there any other raised hands?
Anyone else that would like to make public comment, please raise your hand now. No hands are
Okay,
raised.
great, thanks very much. Okay, that brings me to the Commissioner Committee assignment reports. I will start on my right and work my way down. So that means I'll start with Commissioner Lesnar Buxton.
Nothing to report on the youth council.
Okay, thanks so much. Commissioner, Anander LaBerge.
Jet lag got the better of me, and I did not make the meeting for the Arts and Crafts Show. I'm sorry.
Thanks. Vice Chair Clark.
Sorry about the mask, guys. I have an upcoming vacation.
It's okay.
Yeah. I attended the Street Tree Advisory Committee meeting with the staff committee members. We visited every tree on this agenda and discussed each at great length. I was unable to attend the Park Foundation meeting, and I did attend the ribbon cutting of the park dance floor and was thrilled to see an excited community and a beautiful dance floor. So thanks for that.
Thank you. Commissioner Longstreet.
I also attended the ribbon cutting at Oak Park, and it was wonderful to see they had a group of children there that came by and went up and danced, and it was really nice, and it looks beautiful. And just the other thing is, I would like to commend staff. I received an unsolicited compliment about Lobster Joe's camp from a mom whose kids are signed up and signing up for more sessions because they've had such a good time, and I think that was a good recommendation, so congratulations.
Thank you. Commissioner Feck.
I was unable to attend the Creek Street Advisory Committee.
Thanks. And Commissioner Aldana.
Yes, I attended the ribbon cutting at Oak Park also regarding the dance floor. Very nice improvement. Also attended a neighborhood improvement task force meeting on the Milpas Cacique area. And on the, what corner would that be? That'd be the southwest corner of Alisos and Cacique. It's in bad shape, and there was various ideas, and one was a pocket park, and I really like that idea. So hopefully we can continue that conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that could be exciting. Park, let's see, there were 2 meetings of the Park Foundation. I had to go back and check my calendar since we didn't have the commission meeting, the regular commission meeting last month. And reviewed general financials, elected new officers at the June meeting. Discussed band shell funding, still about $25,000 short for the band shell. And then also have started a conversation on future fundraising campaign for Ortega Park, including the possibility of federal and state funding once we are shovel ready. Also attended, we had 2 meetings of the De La Guerra Plaza Advisory Committee Arts and Culture Subcommittee. Though both of those, I'd say they were formative meetings, made some good progress in determining basic parameters for those areas that will be used for art, and then have started working towards a path for community engagement. I'm going to be starting with the Chumash community. And that's that. Next on the agenda is the summary of council actions, which covering, sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. God, I did it
Chair
every
McGill.
time. It's right at the bottom here. I'm sorry.
A couple of things under commission and staff communications I wanted to share with the commission. There's been some discussion over the last month about scheduling of items before the agenda. So rather than put it all down, I know I spoke with Chair McGill, for example, about wanting to have a budget work session. So I wanted to share that with the commission. There's also been discussion about when Ortega Park is coming back before the commission. So I wanted to give you all an update on where we are with that. And then also a few announcements, if I could. I can wait till the director's report, but I can also give you those announcements if you like. So which
Sure.
would you prefer? Start with?
Why don't we start with, do the announcements now? Yeah.
Okay. So a couple of things that I'd like to share with the commission first. The city of Santa Barbara is going to be receiving the President's Award from Santa Barbara Beautiful for the renovation of Cabrillo Pavilion. Santa Barbara Beautiful has been a partner with the city for decades. They're huge supporters of our tree planting program. They hold an annual awards event. And oftentimes, well, there's a variety of award categories. And often project proponents submit their application for consideration. In this case, we did not submit an application. It's an award that is identified by the president of Santa Barbara Beautiful. And the president tours whatever facilities he or she thinks is worthy of the award. So the event's on the 18th of September. I don't believe invitations are out yet. And then also, a few months ago, we submitted a request for community priority funding for the Dwight Murphy Field renovation project, and learned that it is made it through the House Appropriations Committee at the federal level for $1.5 million. So that's a good way to segue into the fact that the Gwendolyn Strong Foundation, which is a great partner of ours, is close to meeting their $6 million mark for renovation, for their contribution toward that project. So that's marching along pretty quickly. And then looking ahead, because we didn't have an agenda last month. You went on a site visit to Ortega, Sunflower, and Eastside Neighborhood Park. And thinking ahead to the future of what we're working on, we anticipate we will be bringing the Arts and Crafts Show discussion back to you in September. If you remember, the commission gave us direction, gosh, I think it's been a year or more, and there's been a lot of work done by the art show and by staff on that, and we'll be asking for commission direction at that time. We also are working on a commercial use in city parks policy. We had an explosion of that, both permitted and unpermitted, and so we're trying to get a handle on that, and also just because of the impact to park resources and better understanding who's using what and where. So we'll bring that before the commission to get your input, likely next month. And then for Ortega, we're currently working on a number of fronts in the final design plans. We have a murals meeting, the 4th meeting, I believe, tomorrow. And we're working on the mural implementation plan, which will come to both the Arts Advisory Committee and the Parks and Recreation Commission as part of moving that project forward. I don't have a date for that yet, but it is something that we're actively working on when it's ready. And so there's a lot of work effort and community discussion before we're ready to bring that forward. Plus, we would go to Arts Advisory so they can make recommendations to the commission. So that's, I think those were the top ones that I wanted to mention. Oh, and then lastly, do a capital project sort of overview update, perhaps at your September meeting, depending on how staff workload lines up, because we will be going into the 5-year capital improvement plan starting in October, November, which the commission then would receive in November. So sort of queuing up where we are and where we want to go.
Thanks, and congratulations both on Dwight Murphy and Cabrillo Pavilion. That's really exciting. And I saw on KUIT, I think it was last week, a really glowing story about Cabrillo Pavilion too. So on the news, the 5 o'clock news. Or maybe it's the 6 o'clock news. Anyways, the news. And I guess just looping back, and it'll be good to see all those other items coming up before us, just looping back to the budget workshop. If capital review is coming in September, so that would be kind of a budget deep dive workshop, then we'd really be needing to target for August, wouldn't we? We're going to do that.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, we would work with you outside of this meeting to determine everyone's availability.
Okay, great. That would be
that's
good.
helpful.
Okay, thank you. All right. Back on track then for employee recognition.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, we have 2 months to report, again, because we did not have a regular meeting in June. And so in June, we had 2 staff members, Peyton Moore, who is a recreation coordinator in our sports program, being recognized for 5 years of service. Peyton's been with us longer than 5 years. I think he started as an hourly, and then he was permanent part-time and ultimately became a full-time employee. And then Steve Biddle, who's a park supervisor, has been with the city for 10 years, which is really difficult for me to imagine because I remember hiring him. And Steve oversees a lot of our open space park management. He's involved in our trails maintenance work efforts. He also is involved in beachfront related management for our beaches and our waterfront contracts. So I want to recognize him. And then for July, Cameron Benson was recognized for 15 years of service as the Creeks Restoration Clean Water Manager. So as you well know, through the years, Cameron's played an instrument role in advancing the Creeks program and division objectives, and it's been a delight to work with him all that time. Thank you.
Fabulous, and thank you. Well-deserved recognitions for everyone. We've got Rec, parks and creeks, so well covered with N5, 10, and 15, all important roles and making great contributions, and I want to thank all three of them. Which then takes us, now we're on the summary of council actions, and which is, again, over 2 months, is a fairly long list. Having read through it, does anybody have any questions or comments for Director Zachary?
I had a
Yeah.
question. I think I know the answer. I just wanted to clarify. I noticed a difference in compensation between some of the camps ranging from 65 to 90% of the total basic fees. And I was assuming, and I just want to know if it's correct, is the compensation, percentage of compensation that the camps receive based on the amount of infrastructure that the city provides? Like, so the ones that are on an open beach don't require much, so they get 90% of the fees, et cetera?
Chair McGill, Commissioner Clark, yes, there's a variety of factors that go into the fee setting where you see 90%, for example, for Lobster Joe's. We essentially mostly just provide the marketing, and it doesn't require a lot of other additional assistance from the city.
Thank you. Anybody else have any other questions or comments? Okay.
Chair McGill, if I could just add,
Sure.
we did have a proclamation before council at the end of June for Parks Make Life Better Month, and I want to thank Commissioner Longstreet for attending that.
Thank you. Yeah, great. That takes us to the minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes, so we will take them separately.
Chair McGill, I'm sorry, the June minutes did not make it to this agenda, so we have to carry it over.
Okay. So we have the May meetings, the May
Yes.
minutes. Okay. So we'll just carry that over to next month. So the recommendation is that we waive the reading and approve the minutes of the regular meeting of May 25th. Would anyone like to make a motion?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Great, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And we have 1 abstention. And then we will, okay.
Chair McGill, and I'm sorry, Ms. Naraj, we have meeting minutes from the site visit, I believe?
Yes, but they did not make it on the agenda. They got omitted from
okay.
the agenda.
All right, okay.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of, but then I looked at this and said, well, she's right, they're not on it. That's okay. I think what, having read them, I think it might be of use to, I'll put a couple words about what we did at each site visit, just for clarity anyway, so, I'll get that in before next month. All right. That does take us now to, and we did not have a youth council report, I assume, because I'm not seeing anybody. And then that now takes us to the street tree advisory items. And Mr. Slack.
Good afternoon, Chair McGill and Commissioners. The first Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation for review is the request to remove 34 various species located within the 3700 block of Modoc Road. This is an extension of the recently completed Modoc multi-use path. Consistent with other city projects, the applicant here is Public Works. I neglected to mention that. But we oftentimes, when we have city projects, invite key staff to give us like a brief project overview. So today, joining us is Taylor Berryman, project engineer with Public Works, to talk about this bike path extension.
Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Nathan. Thank you, Chair and Commissioners of the Parks and Recreation Commission. This is a pretty instrumental project that you've seen the groundwork for going on out there on Las Positas and Modoc over the past 2 years now. So what we have shown on screen is a map of the existing bike trails throughout Goleta and the city of Santa Barbara, shown in black, bolded, as well as the colored routes that are either proposed or in construction. So if you narrow your focus into the red area, that's where the 34 tree removals that the Street Tree Advisory Committee recommended that we move forward with and include 34 tree replacements. But to back out a little bit, there's also the green area, which is a two-phase county project that will build a multi-use path to the south of Modoc Road, connecting it to the Auburn Trail and where our red path is proposed. The blue trail is along Cliff Drive, and that is a potential ATP project, Active Transportation Program, that Public Works hopes to get grant funding for as early as this October. And the black path extends as you drive down 101 south all the way to Ventura. So these colored links are super critical to connect that entire bicycle infrastructure that spans the central coast of California. So narrowing into the red patch where the city has to connect its multi-use path to the county line is where those 34 trees are proposed for removal. That path wasn't built previously with the Modoc multi-use path because it terminates in an unsafe area because the county's path wasn't built yet. So we stopped the path about 1/10 of a mile at Calle de los Amigos. And Nathan, next slide. So here's an overview of where the path is proposed. We have Arroyo Burro Creek in the lower right-hand portion of this picture. The existing road is where the city overlaid it, and it's nice and fresh. You can actually see that there's no striping on the road. So this was just following the completion of the Modoc and Las Positas multi-use path. The path proposed will be on the right side of the road, shown in this drone shot, and the road will actually wedge 12 feet to the left side or the north to avoid the sensitive fish and wildlife habitat that surrounds Arroyo Burro Creek. In doing so, we save several oak trees and I believe a couple willows, but we put in the path of the new road, a couple of those chamois, ash, and other various tree species on the other side. But it helps us avoid some critical and sensitive habitat, as well as an erosion site on that edge. Next slide. So here's a concept level drawing of the path. The road as shown is diverging a little bit to the north of the upper portion of this photo. The trees, I believe we have a breakdown of it later in the slides, but the majority of the trees are on that north side, and a couple, it is 2 trees are on the south side, just outside of the jurisdiction of Fish and Wildlife, but within the footprint of the multi-use path. And then about 6 to 10 more of the trees are closer to the intersection at Calle de los Amigos. Next slide. So this is a rendering of the basic breakdown of what you'll see out there. On Modoc, there is not the center lane there's not the center turn lane. This was a rendering that was used primarily in Las Positas and Modoc, but the general overview is still the same. So you have the raised median between the multi-use path, on-street Class 2 bicycle infrastructure, and then the north and south lanes along Modoc. Next slide. So here's the breakdown of the trees. We have 34 trees proposed to be removed. These trees are varying species. 15 of the trees are less than or equal to 6 inches diameter breast height. 24 of the 34 trees are non-native, and 28 of the 34 trees are on the side of the street adjacent to the railroad tracks. So it's actually, my numbers were a little bit off. It's too close to the, these numbers are correct. My numbers that I stated before were off. It's 2 trees, if you go back 2 slides. So it'll be 2 trees just outside of Fish and Wildlife's jurisdiction, and then 4 trees at the Calle de los Amigos intersection. And then the remainder of the trees, all 28, are on the north side of the road. And 34 new Channel Islands oaks will be planted as part of the project. Public Works will maintain those trees for 2 years to ensure that they're in good health when Mr. Slack and his group take over the long-term maintenance of the trees with their crews. The Channel Island oak is the prescribed street tree for this block of MODOC. Next slide. So here's a map showing the location of the trees in their rough canopy size. You can see that you only see a couple canopies. That's because a lot of the trees are, like I mentioned earlier, fairly small, under 6 inches diameter breast height, so you wouldn't even see the dashed canopy circle. But there are a couple large ones that will be removed with this proposed project. Next slide. That's it. That concludes it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anybody? Sorry?
Just to recap, the applicant's requesting 34 various trees, also proposing to plant 34 new trees with a 2-year maintenance. The Street Tree Advisory Committee reviewed the trees on site, noting there was the various species, various health, ultimately after review, determining the project to be of significant both pedestrian and cycling benefit, and made a recommendation to approve the application with the removal of 34 trees and planting of the 34 new trees.
Okay. Thank you. All right, now I'll open up for questions. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question. With our current drought conditions, is 2 years of maintenance long enough to assure that these trees will live a long and healthy life?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Longstreet, 2 years is pretty good in terms of continual watering for establishment. Time will tell with the water scarcity issues. If if things turn around and we see, at least nearly average rainfall, I think that 2 years would be adequate. I think if any of the commissioners have been able to visit the MODOC and Las Positas bike path, the trees have been watered for less than 6 months, and we've seen huge gains. And 2 years is fairly common for establishment. So I think that we've had conversations with Public Works and made a determination that 2 years was satisfactory.
Thank you. Any? Commissioner Aldana?
Yeah, I got two for now. I'm just curious, who owns the property, and does the neighborhood support the project?
Yes, so there's no acquisitions. Public Works, it's Public Works right of way, or city right of way, and there's no. The second question was: does the public know, or is there?
Does the neighborhood of that area, do they support the project?
Yes, going back several years, I think before I was even at the city, this has been on the bicycle master plan as a long-term project, as well as outreach efforts with the Las Positas MODOC Trail and general support received by our transportation planning staff.
Mm-hmm. And there was...
I believe we saw the whole project in total before all the way. And the only opposition or concern we heard about tree removals was farther up MODOC on the housing side, not so much the side that is the right-of-way. So it did receive thorough public hearings. That must have been 3 to 4 years ago? Yeah.
Chair McGill and Commissioner Aldana, you might be referencing the county extension. So the portion that you're considering today is only within the city limits. So
Right.
So the edge of this work is city, and then subsequent, the rest of MODOC to the Auburn Trail, which is right where the riding ring is, that's county unincorporated, and there has been some discussion around that, which isn't what you're acting on today.
So I want to be
So-
cognizant, sorry.
What we're talking about is from Calle de los Amigos to the entry of the country club, the Cumbre Country Club, correct? Something of that nature?
The creek would be a better delineation, Arroyo Barrio Creek. It's about 500 feet, 800 feet east of the entrance to the country club.
Got
But
it.
generally, yeah.
Better, thank you.
So I just have a kind of a follow-up to this chain of conversation, so I'll go ahead and ask my question, but I want I'll then make sure that this side of the room gets to ask questions. My follow-up really to Commissioner Aldana's query is that certainly what we're seeing in the news recently is a fair bit of media coverage of the county extension. And my question, which is very related to Commissioner Aldana's question, is the city extension really dependent on the county extension? I mean, in other words, if the county extension did not go through for some reason, would we want to go ahead and do the city extension? Would that make sense?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. That's a really good question, and I probably under-explained. The county is in construction right now, so it's actually pretty integral that the city move forward with their realignment because their road will divert 12 feet to the north away. So the city's road, when they're complete, will have to line up with that new road.
Okay, so the county's not in any kind of consultation phase, they're actually in construction?
Yeah, to further kind of complicate things, the county's trees that are contested are part of their Phase 2 project. Their Phase 1 is happening right now. There's equipment on site.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Any questions? Commissioner Lester Buxton on Andrew LaBerge, Clark? Okay. I'll just leave it on. With that, open it up to see if there's any public comment. I have no speaker slips in front of me, but do we have any raised hands?
I do not see any raised hands for this item. If anybody would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand.
Okay, great. So with that case, if there are no further questions, I will open up for discussion and/or a motion.
Well, I would make a motion that we concur with the Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation for the removal of 34 trees along Modoc and the replacement, one-to-one replacement with 34 trees. And this meets the community need, right? Is that the finding?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Longstreet, in this instance, these are technically trees within the right-of-way, so a finding's not necessary.
Okay, then we will leave it at that.
Okay, we have a motion. Does anybody second?
I'll second it.
All right, thank you very much. Any further discussion?
I should have asked this question earlier, but will the box sizes be similar to the ones that were planted along Las Positas?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Clark, our discussions have been around a 15-gallon, which is consistent with the other island oaks that have been planted along Modoc Road.
Thank you.
Okay, no further questions or discussion. Commissioner Beck? Then, all right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Thank you very much. Just don't let me touch it.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, the next Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation for review is the request to remove an American sweet gum. This is a street tree located in front of the property at 1315 Ensenada Street. The applicant's requesting removal of the street tree due to concerns with water service disruption. On the application, they noted a previous disruption that had been repaired, and they expressed concern with the tree's location, long-term development of the tree, and continued issues with the water service. If you're able to perform a site visit, you were able to see that the tree is relatively close to a couple water services that do service the property. The committee reviewed the tree on site, noting that it was in pretty decent shape, well maintained. There was discussion regarding water service. This is something that I think we can all say that we've seen a fair amount and somewhat increasingly more and more as we review applications. In this instance, the disruption was fixed several years ago, and there are no current issues with the tree next to the water meter. And after review, the committee made the recommendation to deny the request for the removal of the American sweet gum at 1315 Ensenada Street.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll turn my head to the right this time around. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Slack?
I have a question.
Yes, Vice Chair Clark.
I just want you to verify, it's my understanding that I saw in the report that the plumber recommended to the owners that they remove the tree to avoid the water line being severed. But if it's a newer water line, because they've done repairs, there's no place for the roots to go and seek water. Is that correct? So that's the owner isn't at risk of having the line severed if it's new.
Chair McGill and Commissioner Clark, with water services, there does exist a potential for multiple disruptions over time. So in the case of sewer lateral repair, it's rare that once sewer laterals are repaired that you get root entry again. So in the case of water service disruptions, typically what we see is a tree's been planted relatively close to a water service, and as the root system of the tree increases in diameter, if they're in close proximity or in direct contact with a water meter or a service line, either on the street side or the property side, over time there can be pressure from that root system and it can cause a leak. So to say that it won't happen again, there's the possibility that it could. Water services are unique, and it's usually always a pressure-related issue due to the secondary growth exhibited in broadleaf canopy trees.
Any questions from this side?
And this actually doesn't pertain to the tree, but as far as uprooting, what is the amount of inches of the uproot before the Public Works goes and fixes the sidewalk?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Aldana, 3/4 is kind of the threshold. I think situations can differ, and I think a lot of that has to do with the amount of use as well. There can be lower thresholds in higher pedestrian areas, but 3/4 is typically what will trigger action, and that could be an asphalt padding, shaving of the sidewalk, or in some cases complete replacement.
Got it. If I could make a suggestion, because there is some uprooting there. On the picture, I know exactly where it's at. So if you're facing the house, it'd be on the left-hand side, and it was 2.5 inches, and there was already asphalt. They already attempted to patch it at one point, so if we could make a suggestion for Public Works to handle that.
Chair McGill and Commissioner Aldana, we definitely will. Oftentimes when we receive street tree applications and hardscapes are disrupted, prior to application review, we do report that. So we'll check our records and see if it's been reported, and if not, make sure to report it to Public Works.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? I just want to make sure there's no other questions here. Okay. Commissioner Longstreet.
Are they giant bird of paradise that are planted there? When I made a site visit today, they're quite overgrown also, and I located right next to the water. I would assume that there's more than one problem in that parkway. And along with Commissioner Aldana, I was looking at those sidewalks, and my thought is that they're not continuous. Repair on that, it's not a block of continuous sidewalks. It must be on the city's list of to be done, because I know they have a complete list of incomplete blocks of sidewalks, and that one is definitely incomplete. It also would benefit by a lot of attention, I think.
there are no, I guess the only, am I remembering correctly that it looked like it had been root pruned at some point? Am I remembering that one right? In which case, my question would be, does that impact the viability of the tree?
Chair McGill and Commissioners, if root pruning crossed the threshold where we felt that there was a safety issue, we would just take action on the tree and remove it. So in the case especially where you have surface roots, sometimes it's not uncommon to see like evidence of past root pruning.
Yeah, okay, thank you. If there are no further questions, I will turn it to public comment. I do not have any speaker slips. Do we have anybody calling in?
No hands are raised.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, I'll open it up for any further discussion and/or a motion.
Okay. I would make a motion to deny the removal at 1315 Ensenada Street for the American sweet gum.
All right, well, I will second it. Do we have any further discussion?
Can we add that to have the streets department assess it in the motion? Because it needs attention.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, I can confidently guarantee that staff will follow up.
Yeah,
Thank
I would suggest we leave it at that, but yeah. And we can just go walk it and make sure. If there's no other further discussion, we have a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. So now Sunset Drive.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, the next Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation for review is the request to remove an evergreen pear. This also is a street tree located in front of the property at 3657 Sunset Drive. The applicant's requesting removal for various reasons. Those included disease, previous loss of limb, the tree being a non-native species, desires to re-envision and re-landscape the parkway, as well as view-related issues. The committee reviewed the tree, noted it was in good health, reasonably maintained, and ultimately, after discussion, determined there were no criteria that satisfied for removal at this time and made a recommendation to deny the request for the removal of the evergreen pear at 3657 Sunset Drive.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. My only, yeah, just the one question is that the applicant said that the tree was diseased and losing limbs. The report says that it's in good health. There is the picture of the leaves with all the brown spotting. Would that be what the applicant is referring to?
Chair McGill and Commissioners, that is correct. So the evergreen pears in town, and you can see it now all throughout the community, they developed this pathogen called fire blight. To tree people, it's what we would call cosmetic. It may not look great all the time, but it's not detrimental. It doesn't really cause or lead to any structural issues. There was one loss of limb, and that's completely unrelated to the fire blight. It can make things a bit unsightly during certain parts of the season, but again, we would consider it to be a non-factor in determining tree removal.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm not seeing any more raised hands, so I'll turn it to public comment first. Do we have anybody wishing to speak? There's no slips here.
No hands are raised.
Okay. And with that, I will now open it up for comments and/or motion. And Vice Chair Clark.
I have a comment. So when we went out and did a site visit for this tree, there was someone actually working in the front yard of the house, and he said to us, please don't do anything right now. I'm really enjoying the shade. So I was like, okay, the tree does provide a benefit to the neighborhood. And then looking up, there was an active nest with a mother and babies in the tree. And reviewing the application, And also, I think what the owner's doing with the yard, it looks really nice. But the trees in the parkway, it's not in her front yard. And in the application, she mentioned that the trees blocking the view. And I totally understand that. I had a view taken away from my house by a neighbor's shrub, and it was a bummer. But historically, the city doesn't really endorse removing trees to keep or preserve a view, because our city could get pretty denuded if we started doing that. I just wanted to share my experience with that visit. Does anybody else have a comment?
Yes, do we have any other comments? All right,
I'm prepared to make a motion if it's
Okay.
a good time.
seems like,
Okay, I would like to make a motion to agree with the Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation to deny the removal or request at 3657 Sunset.
I'll second.
okay. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any additional discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so moved. And that takes us to De La Guerra Plaza.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, the next Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation for review is the request to remove a Mexican fan palm. This is a park tree located within Stork Placida, directly adjacent to the property at 624 East De La Guerra Plaza and also 726 State Street. You may recall we recently reviewed this tree for removal during the March 23rd, 2022 meeting. At that meeting, the Commission made a motion to deny the request for removal without prejudice to allow the applicant to return in the future with additional information. And the request, the real driving factor behind the request was the palm was damaging the corner of the building at that time. The applicant has since resubmitted. They've provided a very detailed private arborist report with additional information regarding the tree and its proximity next to the building. The committee reviewed the tree. There was extensive discussion on site regarding the tree in the building, consistent with past review, focusing on the location of the palm and specifically the development of the tree's root system. And just to recap, palms are monocots and their root systems do not have what we would refer to as secondary growth, so they do not get larger in diameter over time. They continue to grow linearly, but there's no expansion in diameter, which is typically what leads to damage. And we see that often with sidewalks, meter boxes, and those sorts of things. And it's exceedingly uncommon with palms, but at times palms can cause hardscape damage and disrupt things as well. So again, the committee had extensive discussion, in looking at the tree and reviewing the supplemental materials, still came to the determination that there was not substantial evidence to support the removal of the Mexican fan palm, and ultimately made a recommendation to deny the request for the removal of the Mexican fan palm at 624 East De La Guerra Plaza.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. We do have a few speakers, and I will take them in the order I received the slip. I think actually it makes sense to listen to the speakers, given who they are, and then take any questions and discussion after that, because I think we'll get a fuller picture by listening to the comments. So I will start with Bill Spiewak. Welcome, come aboard. I understand you have a presentation, and I understand that you also know that you have 2 minutes.
Can you give me 3?
Oh, okay, I'll let you open your thing.
Commissioner McGill and Commissioners, Chairman McGill. Yes, I would agree with Nathan that these trees do not have secondary growth. However, we're not talking about the trunk being the problem, we're talking about the root system being the problem. And if you look at this area here, this is called the root initiation zone. okay? It's part of the trunk, but it's also part of the root zone. And what you find is that beneath these dead outer roots is a layer of root initials beneath that, which grow and elongate, which is why this trunk has gotten larger in diameter than it was when it was originally planted. Otherwise, if it didn't grow in diameter, it never would have approached the building like this. You can see that the roots have also uplifted the concrete here. And this goes 24 inches up the side of the wall. So if you look at this diagram, root initiation zone on a lot of trees, on palms, is below the ground, but also on many palms, you see it above the ground. This is called a root boss, actually. So this whole area here is a live area that produces roots. And the reason why these die off is because they're exposed to the air. But when they're underground, the growth is facilitated by water. And as a result, you do get growth in diameter of the root system. So I would agree the trunk does not have secondary growth, but the root system does get larger in diameter. And as you can see, at the corner of the building, this root system is butting up against here. It's just flat against that. I took a chisel and I chiseled this city tree. Sorry, please don't arrest me for that, but I had to research this myself and went down about 2 inches or so from there with a chisel and exposed these. All these light spots are what they call root initials. And the building owner at one point, about 5 years ago, went to waterproof the building, and they could only go this far. It's impeded here. They can't get any further around the corner and waterproof their building. They had a contract out there who stated that the water against the building is causing degradation of the masonry. Here I wasted a little under 10 gallons of water to show the flow. I dumped some water, hosed off some water here, and you can see the way the water flows. You can see there's a lip over here, and it collects in this area. It can't go that way. It does drain off to the side to some degree, but it also settles up in here, and we are talking about less than 10 gallons of water. Furthermore, I took a level to show that this is sloped towards the threshold, not away from it, as well as if you look at the edge of this concrete area outside of the threshold, there's a little bit of a lip.
Mr. Spiak, if you could wrap up.
I'm wrapped up.
Okay.
That's it. So there's two choices I see. One is to remove the tree and avoid this problem with potential water, or down the road, have a potential large claim for water damage to a building, inside the building, to the side of the building. I don't know. It's a city tree. You have to make that decision where you want to go with that. My client said they would agree if the Park Commission would cut along the side.
Okay, thank you.
You're done with me.
Thank you very much. Put up, okay. And Maury Tremont, you are,
Can we ask questions?
let's take all of them, then ask questions, if it's all right with you.
I was going to ask Bill a question. I wanted to hear about that.
Okay. Okay, well, and Vice Chair Clark very much would like to ask Mr. Spiewak a question first.
I just wanted to hear the rest of what he was saying. His client said they would, I didn't understand, cut the side of it. What did he mean?
Okay, yeah, if you could maybe come back and answer that question.
I'm sorry, Mr. Spiewak. I wanted to hear the rest of that. You said your client was amenable to doing what?
Well, you could slice off a side of the roots or the protective outer coating. Palms are like a Tootsie Roll pop. It's got a hard outer candy with a soft, chewy center. It's not really soft inside, but once you cut close, you can, decay can enter and cause the tree to fail at some point. So I'm suggesting remove the one trunk and leave the other trunk. That seems like the logical thing to do. It would take care of this problem.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for answering.
Now I'm going to go inspect the inside of my palms and see if they taste like a Tootsie Roll.
Can actually make wine from them.
All right. And then you are deferring to Duke McPherson. Okay, great, thanks. Okay, so we have Duke McPherson with Stack. All right, Thank you.
Hi, Chair McGill and members of the commission. I hope you got my statement. I tried to get that to you in time. Boy, this is a really valuable palm tree, as it's part of a pattern of plantings in this little placita, planted in 1972. So I urge you to really consider preserving it. In my opinion, I do not think the roots, the aerial roots from the base of the palm are affecting the side of the building in any way. There's no pressure. As Mr. Slack said, the roots stay the same size from the time they're initiated for their whole life. So there's no pressure as you'd find in woody tree roots. So I don't believe there's pressure, and you can't see any movement in the wall itself. I think that there's a possibility that some cutting, maybe 3 or 4 inches on the side of the root boss, could be the answer here. It's cutting into the roots, the aerial roots, not the trunk. And most of the roots on this particular specimen are dead. The other one paired with it are very alive and active. So that may be the resolution to this, just a narrow cutting, and then possibly maintenance. I don't know if they'll regrow or what, if there's any live ones embedded in there. There are other issues, but I don't think they were as important as this one that Mr. Spiewak has brought up. He did bring up the possible swaying and hitting the building roof. I felt that was going to be a problem, but when we got there, there's a little tiny one-story structure. There's swaying above, in the length of that wonderful palm, but not down here. I don't think that's a factor, and I think it's about a foot or so, 18 inches, maybe 2 feet. So, yeah, the real thing is there real damage occurring from the root mass? And I haven't seen any. And I haven't seen any myself, any uplifting. Not to say they don't do that. I've seen that around, for instance, a swimming pool. There's a lot of humidity, and they'll, lift up little ceramic roots, tiles. So I urge you to preserve this tree, and perhaps Mr. Slack will provide some input on possible maintenance in this regard. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay. And here we are.
Chair McGill, we have a speaker via Zoom.
Okay, and just before we do move to Zoom, I just want to confirm that Ms. Tremont, you do not want to speak at this time?
Not unless you have a specific question.
Okay. Okay, great. All right, then I will. I'm sorry, no. If we have additional questions when we get to comments and questions, we'll. All right, so we do have a speaker via Zoom.
Yes, it's Bruce Reed. Mr. Reed, go ahead and unmute yourself. You'll have 2 minutes.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. I just want to express my support for Mr. McPherson's comments. I think they were right on, and Mr. Slack summarized it very well. I think we were asking for some demonstration of actual damage in the repeated applications and never really saw any demonstrated damage as a result of the growth of the palm. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Do we have any additional? Okay, great. Okay, with that, I would like to open it up to the commission members for questions and/or comments.
I'm sorry, I have a comment, sorry.
Yeah, and I've got one of each, but I'll go last. Vice Chair Clark, then Commissioner Longstreet, then Commissioner Aldana.
Okay, I have a couple comments. When we were doing the site visit out there, I did ask the staff members what they would consider evidence of damage, because I think twice before we've denied this without prejudice, just asking for proof. And evidence of damage would be proof of a cracked foundation, photos of water damage, photos of a spalling of bricks, photos of brick cracking evidence or photos of mortar cracking, a history of resurfacing the exterior. And I did reach out to Mr. Shields, who the applicant had hired as he's a contractor, and he wrote a letter that's in our packet about his belief to the damage to the building caused by the tree. And I specifically asked him today, and he was really knowledgeable and amenable to talking about this. I asked him about his comment that the tree is causing moisture intrusion. And I asked if he had evidence of that, and he said he just assumed it was happening due to the nature of the tree and the building. And I said, can you give evidence? Is that something that a construction expert is able to do? And he said, yes, of course. You know, that he could bring a water meter in there. He could use it to measure moisture inside the wall and compare it to the water outside and see if there was more moisture in than out. He said he could drill small holes and check for damage that way. So there are ways to show damage, and I wasn't aware of that, so I just wanted to share that with you guys.
Thank you, thank you. Commissioner Longstreet.
Mr. Slack, as far as the water intrusion into the building, Commissioner McGill and myself obviously have spent a lot of time on the De La Guerra Plaza Committee. It would seem to me that the engineering of the rebuilt plaza should handle any water intrusion issues, wouldn't it? I mean, that's what the engineering's for, as De La Guerra Plaza's leveled.
Chair McGill and Commissioner Longstreet, I don't know that specific area of the plans well enough to say specifically, but I do know that the slope towards the building is problematic for water, you know, moving towards the structure. So, you know, even in the interim over, you know, the next 20 years while the plaza's being built.
If it ever
an
gets
inside
built.
joke, sorry. But anyway, that could be repaired, and, you know, that slope towards the building could be mitigated so that to help prevent water from moving towards the structure. And you would hope to think that, obviously, with the new engineering of the plaza, that things like that would be taken care of.
Once that moves into engineering drawings and
Yes.
stormwater management and all of the stuff that's ahead of us for that. Yeah, so, okay, thank you, that answers that.
Thanks. Commissioner Aldana.
Yeah, right. Well, you can tell that there was already grinding. You could tell in the picture, page 3 of 4, lower left. The sidewalk was, the sidewalk's already grinded. There is a slope going into the building. It seems to be a problem for the owner. We just agreed to cut down 34 trees. Maybe we could cut this one down and the owner can agree to plant 2 new palms in that area. If it was my building, I would request for it to be cut down. So currently, I agree with Mr. Spiewak.
Yeah, thank you. Any questions, comments from, and then I do have one myself.
I just, a comment. I totally understand where Commissioner Aldana is coming from. And the fact is, I wish this was just any palm tree, but it's part of a historic placida. And I think there was, maybe Mr. Slack, you can help me out. There was a figure in Santa Barbara who did a lot of, I think he was an architect, when he coined a phrase about this placement of the palms and how they, does anyone know what help me out?
You thought
do you remember
Maureen
what I'm?
Trutman, and I think your question has to do with the patterning of the trees as they're planted in Stork Placida. And they planted them in 2s and 3s, not just a single palm. And we have 2, a pair, in this location. And since we could find from looking on site, no clear recognition that there is damage, and the 2 reports that the applicant provided us with do not do that either. So municipal code, we saw, restricted us. We don't have any reason to remove the tree.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I was looking for a quote I heard before, and that helps, but it's something about the placement of palms throughout our city in certain places is lyrical and poetic. And I think that's why the street tree advisory, other than they can't find reasons in the municipal code to remove the tree because there's no evidence of damage, there's also a desire to preserve the lyrical beauty of our city that is enhanced by the placement of palms. I know that sounds really, out there, but it's one reason why so many of us have struggled. We identify with the property owner, but to take away something like that in a public place, in a public park, we want to see evidence. It's like, yes, we can do this, we can take it away if there's hard evidence that there's damage.
Thank you. I guess I have a question. Did you have a question? Yeah, then I am going to go.
I was going to say, as a compromise, because he mentioned earlier that the owner wasn't able to completely waterproof his building, so perhaps just doing that maintenance of cutting out a piece of the palm in order to complete the waterproofing project as just kind of a compromise to see if that works.
So that's where I was going to go.
Okay.
That is actually what I was going to ask, because, I understand Commissioner Aldana's comments. As a homeowner, if I was looking at that building, I would be just like, and I understand that on a macro level, sometime in the future, there will be regrading of De La Guerra Plaza, but this is kind of a micro level gradational problem. Maybe not something that's necessarily going to be resolved by a large engineering solution. But I also, it's obviously a complicated issue, or we wouldn't be looking at it for the 3rd time. I guess is the reality of it. And I would personally, and it's a complicated enough issue that well-educated minds have different opinions. So, it's not yes or no in that regard. So my question cuts down to, what was it called, root bossing? Is that the term? Anyways, where the slice was taken out. That is something I would be interested in hearing more about, because it seems like the real issue here, it's not the roots themselves, because we all know the monocot thing, but it's the fact that there is no way for water up against the building to really drain, and there is no way at this point to completely waterproof the building. So if that could be resolved, is that not a potential solution here? If enough could be removed so that the building could be waterproofed, is that not a potential solution? Mr. Slack, I'll turn it to you.
And Chair McGill and Commissioners, I think in evaluating the amount of roots that are present above the soil surface, there is the ability to do some shaving of that root system to create some space between the root ball or root initiation area and the structure.
And then can we further comment as to, we have divergent views as to whether or not that would be a good idea with respect to the tree?
Chair McGill and Commissioners, I think it would be something that would be kind of like a game time decision. I think as we were doing the work, we would have to be evaluating it. I've seen pretty egregious root pruning done to Mexican fan palms. There's one right next to our office, and they cut a huge amount of its root system off, and I think we'd be well outside of that. I don't think that we would be getting into an area where we would be concerned with, decay entering the stem. Evidenced by Mr. Spiewak's slide, we would just be removing a few inches and not taking out like a huge amount of the actual stem of the palm.
Chair McGill, Commissioners, I can't speak on behalf of the Public Works Department, but there's a sidewalk issue that perhaps there's a way to improve positive drainage away from the building. We'd have to explore that as well.
Thank you.
Well, I don't think we have any standing to give this tree a death sentence. We don't have the findings. We don't have the proof of damage. But, and I will not say in a motion that we have to do something. I think I would support a motion that said we would ask staff to explore this shaving so that we don't tie someone's hands to doing something that does provide a death sentence to this tree. So that's my concerns.
Chair Clark, and then maybe like Vice Chair Clark. Even I'm doing it.
I just wanted to clarify, it's a park tree, so that it would be your department that would be doing the work on the tree? No?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Clark, I think that if staff determines that we have the time and resources to do it, I think that we certainly could take a look at doing the work. In the instance that the applicant was extremely motivated to do this, I think that we could also permit the work to a licensed tree care company, working in direct consultation with them. So we have some options, but I think that we would feel comfortable as staff taking a stab at it as well.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hernandez-Laberge.
Thank you. Looking at how much this root area is up against the building, I'm assuming that this doesn't happen overnight?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Hernandez-Laberge, that's correct. This growth has probably been occurring for a significant amount of time. As Mr. Spiewak pointed out too, the palms that originate from the stem, from the root initiation zone above the soil level, they grow to a certain distance and essentially cauterize due to air exposure. So the long-term exposure to irrigation water has probably encouraged some of that growth, some of that expansion of the root ball that we see towards the building. But it certainly has taken, a considerable amount of time to develop.
Okay, so then if we're talking about a considerable amount of time, that would also then be a considerable amount of time since the building's been waterproofed, if ever?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Hernandez-Laberge, as Mr. Spiewak pointed out in his presentation, they did do some waterproofing 5 years ago, but I think it's safe to draw a conclusion from what we see on site with the palm that area maybe has never been waterproof specifically. We would need to speak directly to the applicant to see if that's something that's taken place, significant amount of time.
And yet, even though we've had waterproofing with some of the areas from 5 years ago and maybe never in this area, there is no evidence that has been presented with regards to actual damage to the building?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Hernandez-Laberge, that is correct.
And we live in an area that's currently under a drought state of emergency? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, one more question, then I think we need to start moving towards a motion, because I think...
One quick question. To do the shaving of the few inches that could possibly be proposed, how long would it take to do that, approximate?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Aldana, I don't think it would really take us that long. I don't think a technician would have that much trouble removing that much root tissue against the side of the building. It's not something that would take like days, you know. I think it's maybe a half a day of work. It kind of depends. It's also something that I don't have a lot of intimate experience with, so to accurately say is difficult.
So half a day, you say? Thank you.
Okay. If there is no further discussion, I'm assuming there will be, but I'll start with that. I'm going to make a stab at it. And I mean, I'll throw in the without prejudices because I think we'll see this again. But needs to go on. Yeah, I know. I'm a big believer in moving on. I am going to make a motion that we concur with the Street Tree Advisory Committee to deny the park tree removal request at 624 East De La Guerra Plaza, and further request that staff work with the applicant to determine if root shaving, I'll call it that, is feasible, and then conduct the root shaving if it is feasible so that the applicant can waterproof the building. That's kind of strung together phrases, and I realize it's not an articulate motion, but that at least gets the idea out that I'm trying to get to.
I will second that motion.
Wow, even phrased like that?
Because you said, have staff explore.
Have staff explore, and if deemed feasible, conduct the work.
Or permit that work to be
Permit,
conducted.
or permit the
However
work to be done.
staff
Yeah.
moves forward with
Yeah.
it. But
Yeah.
explore, because I don't want to see a death sentence. I also don't want to see this come back here. I think if it comes back here, it needs to go to appeal to city council, which is what can happen. I think we've seen it 3 times. We don't have any more evidence than we had. I mean, Mr. Spiewak did a great presentation, but we still don't know that that building's hurt inside. And so I think it's time that it would go to the next level.
Okay, so we have a motion that I hope somebody can write down, and we have a second.
Can you repeat the motion?
No, I don't think I can. I
I'd like to know
move-
what I'm going to
I will
agree
try.
to.
I move that the commission concur with the Street Tree Advisory Commission recommendation to deny the park tree removal request for 624 East De La Guerra Plaza, and further request that staff explore the feasibility of root shaving an adequate amount so the applicant can waterproof the building, and if found to be feasible, either conduct the work or permit it to be conducted. Did you get that? And do you still second that?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion?
Excuse me, cause of drainage away from the building?
I'm sorry, that's not us, yeah. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No, I did not
Okay,
oppose.
so yes. Thank you. All right, so I will, just by way of closure, just want to clarify that any action of the Parks and Recreation Commission made pursuant to Santa Barbara Municipal Code, Chapter 1520, tree planting and maintenance, or Municipal Code 1524, preservation of trees, may be appealed to the City Council within 10 days pursuant to provisions of Section 130.050 of the Municipal Code. So this can be appealed to City Council, which I actually concur. That is, at this point, the next course of action should the applicant choose. All right, thank you very much. And then we have a master plan. Thanks.
Chair, Chair McGill and Commissioners, the last Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation for review is a request to make a modification to the street tree designation list. The request actually is an extension of a previous review the Commission made for a project at 121 East Mason. It was a pretty large-scale project, redeveloping an entire block. The applicant in this case is the project's landscape architect, and they initially made the request to change the existing designation, which was Canary Island Pine, to King Palm and Brisbane Box. The applicant provided a brief synopsis of some of the rationale behind that. I think staff also was supportive of the migration away from Canary Island Pine. It's a species that we continue to see pest and disease-related problems with, and given the newly proposed available rooting volume and tree wells situation, both the King Palm and Brisbane Box made more practical sense in terms of like an update to the designation of Canary Island Pine, which had been in place since, I believe, 1977 with the initial adoption of the list. The committee reviewed the proposal to co-designate those two species. I think that King Palm is a species that still has a lot of merit and use in the community, but we're also slowly migrating away from the use of palms as heavily in lieu of broadleaf trees, which do provide more environmental benefit, specifically in the way of shade and reduction in heat island effect. And ultimately, after review, the committee made a recommendation to modify the designation listing, but to only use the Brisbane Box. So if the commission concurs, the designation listing will be updated to reflect that the Brisbane Box is the approved street tree for Olive Gray Avenue.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? We have one.
I do. As I look at the Gray Avenue plan, they have a lot of palms. Will those, we will get the same number of street trees, correct? We'll just get all Brisbane Box.
And Chair McGill and Commissioner Longstreet, yes, I've been in contact with the project landscape architect prior to the commission meeting, and they've already made the update.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
So-
Commissioner Aldana.
Yes, so Gray Avenue, what does that consist of? 2 blocks? Yeah. So then the 2 blocks would be that type of tree?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Aldana, that is correct. Gray is a pretty unique street. This block, both blocks of Gray Avenue essentially are unimproved within the right-of-way, so there's really no sidewalks. There's some sparse tree population that exists there, but this will be completely redeveloped. We'll have, really wide sidewalks, new tree wells, and then, at some point in the future, you would anticipate the other block of Gray Avenue being developed, and as new street trees are planted, it would be the Brisbane Box.
Okay. I have no speaker slips. Do we have any public comment?
No, no hands are raised.
Okay, great, thanks. With that, I will have open for discussion and/or motion.
Sorry. I'll move that we concur with the Street Tree Advisory Committee to designate Olive Gray Avenue street tree designation to be a Brisbane Box.
Vice Chair Clark seconded. So if there's no further discussion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved. And that completes the tree agenda. Thank you very much, Mr. Slack. And that takes us to our director's report. Director Zachary. Thank you, guys.
So Chair McGill and commissioners, as you know, we're in full swing with summer. Actually, summer's almost over because kids will be back in school in a couple of weeks, which seems really hard to imagine, particularly since our youth activities and our sports section will roll right into school, since they provide after-school programming for young children in the city. But we wanted to report on a few things that are going on. Tomorrow is the last night of our 4-week concert season at Chase Palm Park. We brought it back after a 2-year hiatus. The first kickoff concert was very well received. We've had solid attendance since then. The weather has been perfect. If you're in the waterfront on a Thursday and you can go to the concert, you can swim in the ocean for a reef and run. You could just like relax if you wanted to as well. So the waterfront's been super, super busy. I wanted to point out that the city, the park department funds this, and our cost this year is $31,000. So it's a free service to the community, and it pays for the bands, it pays for the sound. There's obviously staff involved, but I also want to acknowledge that we have 4 volunteer MCs that do a great job, and that's really much appreciated. And then the Children's Fiesta Parade, similarly after a 2-year hiatus, is coming back. It's being moved, just like the Fiesta Parade, to Cabrillo Boulevard. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. I want to give a shout out to the staff organizers of trying to work through all the issues of trying to figure out how to do the Children's Fiesta Parade in a different way. Shorter route, as you can imagine, start and stop and make sure that they can get pulled off without a hitch. It will be our 90th year, so it's one of those programs that we put on that often people don't realize that it's what Parks and Recreation does. Right now, I believe we've got 90 entries, and in talking with staff, we have a lot of first-timers. I was at a meeting earlier today where they were talking about a lot of first-time children to Easter egg hunts because they were too young to do it during the pandemic and now old enough. And so it's sort of like the reawakening of, oh, these cool things you get to do that you didn't get to do during the pandemic. So this effort is we probably invest about $8,000 to put on this little parade in staff time and stuff, but I also really want to acknowledge that we have 50 volunteers that help make it happen, which is pretty amazing, as you can imagine, to put on a parade for children. The new citywide website was launched. Hopefully you've had a chance to try navigating it. This is the 3rd website the city's done since my time with the city. I don't think they get any easier. I think the goal with this one is that we make it far more accessible on a lot of levels. Not just to be able to find stuff, but also be accessible in 2 languages, so Spanish being a priority, but then also accessible to people with various different ways of accessing information, so disabilities. Jasmine LeBlanc led our effort along with Summer's Case when she was here, but she left 4 months before it was done, so we still have more work to do. We do have a new marketing coordinator, so if you see something that's a little awry, don't hesitate and let us know, because everything when you first launch is a work in progress. So on the parks page, of particular note is we have a searchable database, and we really want to make it easy for community members and visitors to navigate their way to find out about who we are and what we're doing. And then I also wanted to focus on East Beach Park, which is where the volleyball courts are. Had not had much attention for a really long time. We'd lost the designated picnic areas due to gopher infestation in time, and when Public Works changed the fencing and put in the back-end parking, and then we obviously still in a drought. We had a brief reprieve. So really wanting to make picnic improvements there. At the end of the year, we look at where we are financially and we reprioritize some of our expenditures to sort of deal with unanticipated needs or projects that we know would be beneficial, because once the year ends, we start with a new year. And so we actually spent some money rebuilding those picnic areas, and it was done under contract, and that was a $23,000 project. So hopefully you have a chance to swing by, not in this report, but something that you will learn about. I think it'll be in September, although don't quote me on that. The restoration of the Arroyo of Andrew Clark Bird Refuge is about to get underway. So if you are down there in the near future and see construction going on, it'll begin on the beach side where they'll be doing restoration and renovation around the outfall. So that's happening. So lots of things going on in East Beach. And then just a couple of other things that we've been working on is and I want to thank Commissioner Anander LaBerge for bringing to our attention the condition of the 5R at Sunflower Park. We actually put 84 cubic yards in there. And we also actually put a total of 422 cubic yards of 5R. So that's the soft stuff that you want to land on in a number of different park locations. This is an area, and this is something that, you know, when we do talk about our budget, we want to share with you, is like the challenges we have, because we don't really have these little discretionary amounts of money to do things on a regular basis. We're trying to get a better handle on what it takes to keep maintenance at a level that we think is best for the community. So in this case, we had places that really needed attention. So in addition, although not for children, for dogs, the Mackenzie Off-Leash Dog Park area gets lots of use, and so the 5R goes all over the place. Sunflower, Stevens, Willow Glen, Hidden Valley, La Mesa, the playground area at Los Baños, Oak Park, and then the Little Pocket Park at Bath and Ortega all got a facelift. And just as context, 422 cubic yards costs $33,000, so it's $70 per cubic yard. So that's purchase and install. So it gives you a sense of what we were able to achieve with that, even a small amount of money to improve our playground areas. So hopefully anyone has a chance to visit, you'll be pleased with the outcome. And I don't have anything else to share, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Commissioner Anander LaBerge, please.
Yes, I have a few questions, and thank you for taking care of the bark over there at Sunflower. Just to the other commissioners, part of what prompted that was my young son when he was 6. He goes to Adelante, which is over on the east side, and they don't have a playground because they share with Franklin on the campus, so they use Sunflower Park for their recreational time. And as he was going across monkey bars, he slipped and he fell, which is normal, but he went down far enough because the bark was low that he actually fractured his wrist. Yes, that was good fun. So I brought this to Director Zachary's attention that they may want to fill it up a little bit to give a little more cushion. So I do appreciate that not only Sunflower, but the other parks also got some attention as well. I do have some questions with regards to East Beach, and I know that you're aware that I'm not impressed with sort of how things have gone. The pavilion is gorgeous, but I do have some questions with regards to the state of things over there. And I would like to know, in the design of the new restaurant for Reunion, why was there no walk-up window counter grill provision included in the design?
Chair McGill, Commissioner Anander LaBerge, I'd be happy to answer that question. If you want to have more of a discussion about the pavilion, we should probably agendize it. It is included in the requirements for that restaurant, and they do have the walk-up system. One of the things I think many of our commissioners are aware of, getting everything underway and started at the Cabrillo Pavilion was significantly stymied by the pandemic. The restaurant's been operating since November, and they are facing all the same issues that every other service sector business is suffering in terms of staffing and organization. So
I'm not sure that that Reunion is on the same page with what should be offered to the public, so that may be something worth.
yeah, it's actually in the contractual agreement, so it's something that's available to the public to review.
And then with regards to the remodel of the breezeway across from the playground that's in the sand there, where it's beautiful, and they took the wall down and made it all open, but they also took out the benches. Is there any plan to put the benches back in?
Yeah, great question. We actually had to rebuild that entire structure, and because it's historic, it got rebuilt to its original plan. And also, the plan was always to remove those walls because of the sightline issues and the safety issues that we had there. We haven't ruled out putting benches in. Again, we just opened. And one of the things that we heard loud and clear from 99.99% of the people is, how are you going to make sure I feel safe when I go there? And so we've started down that path. There may be opportunity to put benches in the future. We're sort of in a wait-and-see attitude and seeing how it plays out.
Is there any plan for enforcement on the bicyclists that still ride through there, despite the efforts to try and make it even a little harder?
We do our best. And we have that issue in any number of places, and unfortunately, we don't have permanent park rangers parked right there 24/7. It's an issue we have all over town, as we're experiencing with electric bikes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good questions. Maybe a site visit at some point for the commission.
Actually, Chair McGill, we'd be happy to do that. I think, I don't know, Commissioner Aldana, have you been inside?
No.
Okay, we could, and then we had planned one, but I think not everyone was available. So we can certainly do that, and we can walk the whole length, and perhaps we can tie it in with the bird refuge, not the whole length of each speech, excuse me, from the outfall, from the edge of city limits to, say, the west parking lot.
Yeah.
And that way we can walk through everything that's going on there.
Yeah, I
Happy
think
to
would
do
be
that.
great. That would be great.
Sure.
Yeah.
The announcement for the Andrea Clark Bird Refuge came out in the City News e-blast today. So they said it's starting August 1st with the Weir Gate side and moving into the re-landscaping. And I think and it'll all be wrapped up in December. I think they have some parameters on times they can work. And I would love to include that in our site visit, because it's been such an interesting project, and it's so wonderful to finally get it done after all these years, and I'm excited.
Just as a point of reference, when I became the Creeks manager, the first question I had was, so when are you going to fix the bird refuge? And
That was a few years ago.
well, it's not that easy.
When De La Guerra gets done, yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Now, next on the agenda is the advisory committee reports. The way I read this is that this really isn't an action item. It's really, we received the reports, so what I would suggest is that everybody should have had a chance to look at them. So if there are any questions or comments, we'll take them. Otherwise, we will just note them as gratefully received, and with a thank you to all the preparers and the committees.
Gratefully received. I have one request or comment. So Jill, I'm one of the two liaisons to the IPM committee, and, oh, sorry, I know. I'm one of the two liaisons to the Integrated Pest Management Committee, and sometimes they have urgent meetings that come up really suddenly, and there's not a lot of notice, and I can't make it, and I would like to make it, so if you could please pass on that as soon as they find out there's going to be something, to email me right away so I can trade shifts or try to reschedule, it would be really helpful. I understand the urgency in having to schedule it right away when there's emergency exemptions, but I'd like to be able to make more of those meetings.
As the second liaison, I would concur with that request.
So Chair McGill and Commissioner Clark, it's in reference to the IPM Advisory Committee?
Yeah.
Having
Correct.
as much advance notice?
Yeah.
We're working on that, and Jasmine LeBlanc can address it further. We're actually trying to get to a regular meeting schedule so that it's.
That would be wonderful.
I would say one of the challenges we have is we, Parks and Recreation, coordinate the program for the entire city. So it's not just about what goes on in city parks. It's also city facilities.
Sure.
And sometimes there's a disconnect about what is required in terms of an exemption request before the IPM Advisory Committee, and so it becomes a little bit last minute. And we want to be as transparent as possible about it. We have the opportunity to issue emergency exemptions as staff, but we try to stay away from that. So we're really working toward getting everybody on the same page. We also have a tremendous amount of new staff in the city organization, so they're all learning these requirements. The folks that have been around for a while, most of them aren't here, and so there's a learning curve. But yes, thank you for bringing that up. We will.
I actually, do you remember my first job? I was a agricultural biologist, and that's what I did, was pesticides and stuff. So I'm interested, and I think I could be useful if I could just make it. So thank you
Sure,
for.
absolutely.
Anything else? If not, they are duly and gratefully received. And then that takes us to old business, of which we have none. And then new business is, it's that time of year. I don't know how this happened so quickly. But it is time to elect a chair and a vice chair for the period August 1st through July 30th, 22-23. I will open the floor.
And I'll drop my glasses. I've put a lot of thought into this, and I would be really interested in seeing if Commissioner Feck would be interested in being vice chair of this commission. I feel like you do your research, you're present, you're intelligent, you're well-spoken. I think you would be a really good fit. And you wouldn't be doing it alone. We'd all be here for you. So if that's something you would consider, I would like to nominate you. Yeah. Okay, I nominate Evelyn Feck to be vice chair of this commission.
Second.
Okay.
Any discussion?
So,
Okay.
Anybody?
I thought of a chair again.
here. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Are you a willing victim?
I am willing, thank you. Happy to do it, thank you.
I think well, I would like to ask if Chair McGill would consider doing it again. Right now, we have 2 completely new members, like with 5 meetings under their belts. And I'm stepping off in December. So you'll gain another new member. So I think it would be nice to have the continuity for another year. Oftentimes we do this, and so I would like to, would you be willing?
Sure.
Okay, I would nominate.
I'll second that.
No way. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. And I think that takes us out. Thank you very much. Good lively discussion, and the meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you.